Chairman, we yield back.
Gentleman yields back, and Mr. Hurd.
Thank you, Chairman, and gentlemen, thank you all for being here, and thank you for your continued service to your country. I've learned recently the value of sitting in one place for a long period of time and listening, and today has added to that understanding. And I'm going to try to ask questions that y'all can answer in this format and are within your areas of expertise. And Director Rogers, my first question to you, the exploit that was used by the Russians to penetrate the DNC, was it sophisticated? Was it a zero-day exploit? A zero-day being some type of, for those that are watching, an exploit that has never been used before?
In an open classified form, I am not going to talk about Russian tactics, techniques, or procedures about how they executed their hacks.
If members of the DNC had not, let me rephrase this, can we talk about spear phishing?
Sure. In general terms, yes, sir.
Spear phishing is when somebody sends an email and somebody clicks on something in that email.
The user thinks they're receiving an email either of interest or from a legitimate user. They open it up and they'll often click, if you will, on a link, an attachment.
Was that type of tactic used in the...
Again, I'm not in an unclassified form, just not going to
copy. I apologize. Director Comey, when was the first time the FBI notified the DNC of the hack? Roughly.
I think August of 2015.
And was that prior to any of the information being leaked, to being sent on, put on WikiLeaks?
Yes, the first Russian-directed releases were middle of June of the next year by DC Leaks and this Guccifer 2.0 persona, and then that was followed by WikiLeaks. So about a year, a little less than a year earlier.
So there was about a year between the FBI's first notification of some potential problems with the DNC network and then that information getting on WikiLeaks.
Yes.
Have you been able to, when did the DNC provide access to the FBI for your technical folks to review what happened?
Well, we never got direct access to the machines themselves. The DNC in the spring of 2016 hired a firm that ultimately shared with us their forensics from their review of the system.
Director Rogers, did the NSA ever get access to the DNC hardware?
The NSA didn't ask for access. That's not in our job jar. That would
good copy. So, Director, FBI notified the DNC early, before any information was put on WikiLeaks, and when you have still never been given access to any of the technical or the physical machines that were hacked by the Russians.
That's correct, although we got the forensics from the pros that they hired, which, again, best practice is always to get access to the machines themselves, but this, my folks tell me, was an appropriate substitute.
At what point did the company the DNC use share that forensic information to you?
I don't remember for sure. I think June. I could be wrong about that.
The company went public in June of 16 with their conclusions, I would assume.
Yeah, I think it was about the time. I think it was a little bit before the announcement, but I'll say approximately June.
So that was how long after the first notification that the FBI did of the DNC?
10 months.
10 months. So the FBI notified the DNC of the hack, and it was not until 10 months later that you had any details about what was actually going on forensically on their network.
That's correct. Assuming I have the dates about right, but it was some months later.
Knowing what we know now, would the FBI have done anything different in trying to notify the DNC of what happened?
Oh, sure.
What measures would you have done differently?
We'd have sent up a much larger flare. We'd have just kept banging and banging on the door, knowing what I know now. We made extensive efforts to notify. I might have walked over there myself, knowing what I know now. But I think the efforts we made, that our agents made, were reasonable at the time.
Good copy. And do you have a ballpark of the number of private sector entities that you have to notify of these types of breaches?
Hundreds and thousands. In this particular case, we had to notify hundreds, I think maybe more than 1,000 entities that the Russians were hitting at the same time.
Admiral Rogers, do you have anything to add to that?
No, because as we passed the information to the FBI, what started all this was a pretty massive effort on the part of our Russian counterparts.
I've said this many times. The outcome of Grizzly Step, what the intelligence community refers to as the Russian hacking, has been the wedge, whether real or perceived, between the executive branch, the intelligence community, and the public. And this is an asymmetrical tool that the Russians are using in order to destabilize liberal democratic institutions. And I think it is important that we do everything we can to review this, which I fully believe federal law enforcement is doing, as y'all have talked to here. And I'd like to end before yielding back to the chairman. My colleague from California, the ranking member, said in his opening statement, the question most people have is whether we can really conduct this investigation in the kind of thorough and nonpartisan manner that the seriousness of the issues merit, or whether the enormous political consequences of our work will make that impossible. And he adds, the truth is, I don't know the answer. I do. We must. The American people demand this. The future of our democratic institutions demand it, and I'm glad we have two people like y'all involved in this. Mr. Chairman, I yield back my time to you.
Gentleman yields back. Mr. Gowdy's got a follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you and Ranking Member Schiff for having this hearing. Mr. Chairman, you were talking about Russia long before it became fashionable to talk about Russia. If memory serves me correctly, you referred to Russia as possibly our greatest national security threat post 9/11. And as you know, Chairman, I come from a state with a fellow named Graham, who is also no fan of Russia. So, Director Comey, Admiral Rogers, people in your line of work are incredibly respected, both your current line of work and the work that you came from. And people in my line of work are not. And there's a reason. The justice system is respected, and the political process is not. So this is, while this hearing's important, what's really important is what you do after this hearing. And I want you to go find every single witness who may have information about interference, influence, motive, our response, collusion, coordination, whatever your jurisdiction is, wherever the facts may take you, though the heavens may fall, go do your jobs. Because nature abhors a vacuum. And right now, you can't answer most of the questions, either by policy, by law, or because the investigation has not been complete. Therefore, a vacuum exists, which people in my line of work are more than happy to fill. So I need you to fill. I need you to do it with all deliberate speed. But Director Comey, I think it's also important for my fellow citizens to take note of why the system that you come from, the one that I come from, is respected, and this system that I'm in now is not. What is hearsay?
It's information you don't know of your own personal knowledge, but learned from someone else.
It's an out-of-court statement offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted.
I was trying to be a little less lawyerly.
Well, we'll go with your answer. And it is almost never admissible in court. How about anonymous sources? When you were in the Southern District, could you ever call an anonymous source to testify in one of your proceedings?
No.
You couldn't even use hearsay unless there was some widely accepted exception. And what I've heard this morning in some cases is quadruple hearsay. So it would never, a newspaper article would never, ever be admitted as evidence in a courtroom. So the system we respect would laugh you out of court if you came in armed with a newspaper article. But in the political process, that's enough. Let me ask you this, cross-examination. Why are you able to cross-examine witnesses in trial? Why do we have a right to confront witnesses?
Well, it's embedded in our Constitution, and the reason it makes great sense is it's the crucible out of which you get truth.
It is the single best way to elucidate the truth, to test and to probe and to challenge and to test someone's personal exposure to the facts. Cross-examination is the best tool that we have. How do you cross-examine an anonymous source? How do you cross-examine hearsay? I hope that you go find every single witness that you need to talk to and examine every single document. People are counting on you two and your line of work to find the facts. And people are welcome to draw whatever conclusions they want from the facts. But when I hear the word evidence, as I've heard lots and lots this morning, let me ask you this, Director Comey, are you familiar with any trials where one witness may have said the light was red and one witness may have said the light was green? Does that ever happen?
Yes, that's why you have a trial.
Does it ever happen where one bank teller said the assailant was 5'10" and one said the assailant was 6'2"?
Sure.
So that's evidence. You got evidence he's 6'2" and evidence he's 5'11". He just can't be both. The light can't be red and green. So the word evidence, while fancy and legal, the reality is you find facts and then the finder of the fact can draw conclusions and inferences from those facts. So I wish you luck as you begin this process. It is all important. The fact that someone may have had a line of questions about leaks does not mean that they're not interested in all aspects of Russia. And vice versa, the fact that they may not have asked questions about leaks doesn't mean they're not interested in them. You have jurisdiction over all of it. So God bless you as you go on this journey for the facts. And then people can draw whatever conclusions they want. I hope that you will fill the vacuum that is created when y'all are not able to answer questions. With that, I would yield back to the chairman.
Gentleman yields back. Mr. Comey, this is my final list of questions here. I just want to make sure we get this on the record. Do you have any evidence that any current Trump White House or administration official coordinated with the Russian intelligence services?
Not a question I can answer.
I figured you were going to say that, but I just wanted to make sure we got it on the record. How about Counselor to the President, Kellyanne Conway?
It's the same answer. And as I said earlier, I constantly want to ask people, don't overinterpret the fact that I say I can't comment. I'm not going to comment on anybody.
Well, I think I understand that, but here's the challenge: is that you've announced that that you have this big investigation, but now you've got people that are involved in our government that are, the Secretary of State, for example. These are important players, and the longer this hangs out here, the bigger the cloud is. And I know that you're not going to tell me whether or not you have any evidence, but I can tell you that we don't have any evidence. And we're conducting our own investigation here. And if you have evidence, especially as it relates to people in the White House that are working in the White House or the administration, that would be something that we really should know about, and we should know about quickly. And so if you can't give it to the entire committee, I hope you can at least give it to myself and Mr. Schiff, because there is a big gray cloud that you've now put over people who have very important work to do to lead this country. And so the faster you can get to the bottom of this, it's going to be better for all Americans.
I understand. Thank you.
All right. With that, I want to thank the members today, and especially our witnesses. It was a long day, but I think a good discussion.